Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video, and today we are going to do a character guide on Bartz. People really liked my character guide on Machina, so I'm going to go ahead and do another character guide. Now, I do understand Bartz isn't like the newest character, and I did get a request for Pain already. I just want you guys to know kind of my philosophy with this is, so like for Pain, for example, I did not pull for Pain, and I do not own the character. And I don't want to do showcases on characters I don't own, just because I don't feel like it would be just to you guys for me just to basically look at someone else's guide and basically read it off to you, right? So like I want to actually use the character, I want to experience the character, I want to have used the character myself to really understand them. So I'm planning to do these guides on characters that I've played and like really understand well. So as new characters come out that I actually get and that I like max out and use, then yes, I'm going to try to do some on some newer characters as well. But I want to do Bartz today because Bartz has been ridiculously useful basically since his inception into like LD BT era. Like he's just been insane like the whole way through. I have absolutely loved using Bartz. And Bartz is a character that I've used on almost every Lufenia, and I think he's someone that does have some intricacies to how he works that I think a guide would be really helpful for a player that maybe you pull Bartz. I could see somebody getting Bartz, having him maxed out and feeling underwhelmed if they don't really understand what he's doing or how he's helping the party, because he's not like a big time DPS, right? So for Bartz, what I want to do is we're going to start with artifacts, and then we'll look at spheres and then kind of go from there, right? His artifacts are super easy. You just want to go attack 108, simple mastery boost. Simple mastery boost is the main one you want to get, like number one for sure. You need that first, because that's going to give you party int brave, max brave, and attack and defense. So basically all stats to party. It's like a aura kind of, and it's going to be 15% if you stack this times 3. So that's the big one you want to get. And then attack 108 or max brave would be the best ones you could pair with that. Okay. For spheres are a little less important and a little more open-ended. I'm not going to talk about every sphere. I won't always have like a number one best in slot sphere for these. I think Lena had the case where like I think Freya is like a number one best in slot for her D, but like for other characters it's not going to be as clean cut, right? So for A spheres, for example, the general rule is you typically want to increase max brave or attack. That's kind of what A spheres are meant for. The big thing you need to look at for A spheres is to get the most out of your spheres, look at what the spheres do, because some of them have certain requirements. So for example, if a sphere only affects range damage, give that to someone like Kain, who's a really good DPS range character. Even though there are other spheres Kain could use that are really good and maybe even a little bit better, that range sphere is just going to sit there and collect dust unless you find a good range character to give it to. So I feel like that could be a good philosophy with A spheres, right? Other A spheres might affect magic attack, so you don't want to give it to a character that doesn't use magic attack, right? So Bartz, for example, Bartz's one of his main gimmicks is that he has an aura that will imperil the enemies, and it's not a debuff, so enemies that resist imperil, Bartz gets around. So I feel like giving Bartz an A sphere of something like Prish, for example, where when you attack a target's weakness, you're going to raise own max brave and attack by 10%. So because Bartz, his gimmick is always doing weakness damage, or part of his gimmick, I feel like giving him a sphere that has to do with weakness damage could be a really good option for him. Obviously, you could give him any generic A sphere that's just like when he does a crit hit or when he buffs a character or something like that, right? But just in particular, I wanted to note that maybe giving Bartz an A sphere with weakness wouldn't be a bad idea, right? For the C slot, so C slot is primarily like a support sphere. It is geared a lot towards like healing. So Bartz really isn't like a big time healer. So I would avoid giving him one of the healing ones, right? The big thing with Bartz is he does do some buffs. So I would say one of these buff ones is probably okay. So I have an Alphanod refined sphere. It's nothing too crazy, but it just, if he grants a buff, raises party's imp brave and attack by 2%. I like the idea of giving Bartz spheres that do increase the party stats, because Bartz isn't really your main DPS. So I would say any C sphere that you can give Bartz where it's improving something for the party would probably be the best, right? Whether it be max brave or attack, something like that. For the D slot, there's a few things to notice with the D slot. So the D slot does have a lot to do with buffs. So this is good for Bartz because he does do buffing. So I recommend giving him something. I'll just throw out a few examples. Once again, none of these are like necessarily the best in slot. Just go with your own preference. But something like, so Ignis and let me see, I think it's Mog. No, not Mog, sorry. Ignis and let me see, I gotta find it here. So it was Ignis. Where is it? Why do I keep losing? Oh, here it is. Ignis and Ash. So like Ignis and Ash are very similar. So Ash just says after granting buff raises party attack by 5% for 6 turns. Ignis says after granting buff raises party max brave by 5% for 6 turns. So basically Ash and Ignis are very similar. One is max brave, one is attack for the party for 5% for 6 turns. So those could be very good options, right? The other one could be this one here. So this one here for Hope, his sphere is not bad. It raises party's max brave and attack by 5%. You just get it for 3 turns instead of 6. So I think something like Hope or Ignis or Ash, I think something like that would be really good for his D sphere, right? And I chose to give him Ignis, but it honestly, it's not going to be a huge difference. It's not a big thing you're going to notice. I always like putting spheres on my characters just so I feel like I'm getting the best out of them or close to it. But realistically, whether that sphere's on or off, you're probably not going to notice the difference, right? So don't fret about spheres too much. But I do know people are clamoring for sphere guides. So I thought I'll throw a little bit of a sphere thing in here when I do these character guides, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into a fight really quick. And just so we can take a look at Bartz's rotations, right? So what I'm going to talk about is kind of the generic how to play Bartz in his rotations. Now, there definitely will be things when I do these character guides, there will be things in the kits that I leave out. My goal with these character guides is to make them kind of like quick layman's terms, like how do you play the character? I know I've seen a lot of guides online and the YouTubers are just like reading the paragraphs from Decidia Info, and honestly, I'm like falling asleep and I'm so confused I still don't understand. I just want someone to go into a fight and tell me like in general what the buttons do. So that's kind of my goal with this guide here, right? So I'm just going to quick skip through with these other characters. I know I should be like actually doing attacks and stuff, but this is fine. I just want to get to Bartz really quick here. Okay, so with Bartz, just in general, double-handed missile, you want to make sure you use one of each of those right away to get the plus version. So when you do that, it's going to increase his buff. So that's just in general what to do with those right away. And I'll talk a little bit about missile a little bit later when I go into rotations after what I do first. Okay, so typically what I do first with Bartz, very first turn, no matter what, is I actually go into full burst phase. I don't just use the burst attack. The rationale behind this is Bartz's burst buff is very good, and it basically makes his auras like insane for the team. So what I do is I go into double-handed missile right away. So one reason I go into burst phase right away is I can get missile and double hand leveled up right away to help his auras. The other big reason you do this is then you're going to get the 8-turn buff. And then what you do is when the buff is at 1 turn, then you use the burst attack and you refresh it, and it's going to keep the stacks. We're going to talk about the stacks in a second. Okay. Then I'll just do elemental attack here. All you really need to know about elemental attack is it's its overhead buff. So you see that feather that just went to a 12. It started at 6 and now it's up to 12. You just want to make sure you don't ever let that run out. So if it's running low, you want to use elemental attack. The other time you want to use elemental attack is if you want instant break. So like if you're fighting an enemy with like a really huge amount of brave, or you're doing like 1 brave damage to them and just can't even do damage, Bartz has saved me so many times. I've used him in fights almost exclusively for that free break that he can do. It's an auto break. So elemental attacks save for auto breaks or for refreshing the buff. That's pretty much what you want to do there. Okay, so we're going to finish the burst attack here. So what Bartz is going to get, he's going to get an 8-turn buff. And what it's going to do, it's going to give him like, it's going to vastly improve his auras, okay? The other thing in general that's coming out of Bartz's kit, as long as you're kind of keeping this stuff going, is has an aura that is imperiling the enemies to wind. So the enemies are going to be weak to wind, and it's not technically a debuff, so enemies cannot resist it, which is really good. And he's also enchanting the party now. So basically what he's doing just by existing is making our party have weakness damage constantly, which is really, really good, right? All right, so let's do, we'll just let Machina kind of attack through here really quick. I gotta kind of be careful here because these enemies actually could do some damage. Here, we'll just do rapid fire quick. I think we'll be fine. I just did the chaos quest. You can see the enemies are like almost dead already. I actually started recording this video, not gonna lie. I did the Lufenia, and I forgot these guys like all AoE attack right away, and I actually died, and I had to like start re-recording it because obviously I'm not gonna like keep a showcase where I die and I'm like not even done with the showcase, right? And I figured, yeah, I'll just re-record it. Yeah, see, even there we're taking damage. These guys are freaking annoying. Okay, so back to Bartz, okay? So now, basically, what do you do with Bartz at this point? So now, basically, Bartz is set up with all of his auras and everything, but pay attention. So look at his burst buff underneath. It's 8 turns, but it has stacks. And right now it's at stack 1. So you kind of want Bartz to take turns until it gets up to 3 stacks, because that's when it's fully buffed. So what you kind of do is you kind of pick and choose at this point. I usually do the 15 or 35, kind of back and forth, because they are refreshing buffs for him. The big thing to know about Missile, I'll do Missile right now. Missile has gravity, so when it did that very first hit there, it does a gravity shave, which is really good when the bosses have like really big brave numbers, right? So I kind of just work my way back and forth between the 15s and 35s there. And then what I do is, here, we'll actually kind of attack through with these characters a little bit. I just want to make sure I don't kill these guys. Okay, and then we'll just do Brave Attack here. Okay, so basically with Bartz, when his turns come up, you're just mixing in 15s and 35s. Notice his burst buff now is up to 2 stacks. So it can have 1 more stack. And then what you do is between his calls, you just use elemental attack once in a while. Like I said, when you need it for the big re-break, or not re-break, but for the instant break, or if you need to refresh the overhead buff. So now what I'll do is I'll mix in a double hand. And double hand and Missile both do brave gain to the party a little bit, which is very good. And then actually with Lena, I'm just going to do a little heal here, just to make sure I'm not like dying out, right? Sure, let's do that. Do that. So the other thing I want to mention that you can abuse with Bartz, because he's not like a primary damage dealer, and he's so good with his auras and just being an aura bot once you get him set up, what a lot of team comps will do is you run characters that do turn manipulation or steal turns to make it so Bartz doesn't get turns while they go and do all the damage, right? So the really popular one is Rains, Aphmau, and Bartz, because Rains and Aphmau just kind of cycle through each other while Bartz sits there. The other thing you can abuse with Bartz then is you can put calls that have like low turn counts with really good effects. And if you can just keep Bartz sitting there with the calls on, that's actually a really good strategy you can do with Bartz, right? So right now Bartz is at 3 stacks, right? So basically what you do is you continue through the fight. Once again, Bartz, you just cycle through double hand and Missile. His EX, Ianuki, it does a good brave gain and it's very fast, right? So like you'll get this off a lot too. And typically when it's up, I just use it. Unless there's a pressing need that I need to do something else. And then basically what you do with Bartz, we'll get to Bartz one more time here. Really, really quick. Okay, we'll get to Bartz one more time. But basically all you do is you just keep cycling like that until his burst buff is down to 1 turn left. Okay, so let me just go ahead. I'll just Brave Attack. And then Brave Attack with Lena. Okay, so then with Bartz, let's say, so right now my burst buff, it's got the 3 stacks, which is good. But it still has 5 turns left, right? So what you do is you'd run through the fight until it's got 1 turn left. Then what you do is you hit this. You hit his just single standalone burst attack. And what this is going to do, it's going to refresh the buff. But since it was at 3 stacks, it's going to keep the 3 stacks. If you let the burst buff run out and then use this after, it's going to reset to 1 stack, which is going to be way less efficient. So the big thing is don't let that buff fall off. Keep it at 3 stacks and then refresh it with the attack. So like I said, start off with the burst attack, kind of go through the cycle that way. So hopefully this guide helps you guys. I love Bartz. He's a great character. So hopefully some of you have him, maybe that haven't gotten use out of him. Try him with a little bit more understanding, and I think you're going to really enjoy him. So anyways, guys, let me know if you like this guide. Let me know if you have any character requests for maybe older characters that I might have in my box. But I'm going to try to keep these coming out. So thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.